The ones who remember. A thinking zombie sleep story. The wind had no name anymore, but IT crawled across the broken fences, whispering secrets through the rusted mailboxes and hollow homes. The small town of Low Hollow was a place that no longer existed on maps. Its trees leaned like tired soldiers, and its buildings sagged beneath the weight of silence. But still, every morning, just as the gray sun rose over the distant mountains, Jude Mercer walked the same path down Main Street, not because he had hope, but because routine had become his only shield against madness. He didn't remember when the outbreak began. Not exactly. People say these things start with one cough, one bite, one infected stranger on a bus. For Jude, it began with the church bell, a low, mechanical sound that rang for no one, echoing across the valley long after the town was already dead. At first, he thought the infected were like the stories, mindless, shambling things. And most were. But over time, he began to notice something far worse. Some of them could remember. Jude's footsteps crunched over broken glass as he passed the bakery, where the air still smelled faintly of burnt sugar. He wore an old coat that belonged to his brother, sleeves too long, buttons missing. In his pocket, a small notebook. In that notebook, names, the people he had once known, and the places they might still be hiding. Each morning, he checked them off. Each morning, more were crossed out. Each morning, the silence grew louder. Today was different. Today, he saw her. She stood beside the fountain near City Hall, barefoot, hair long and wild. Her dress was torn but clean. Her eyes, they weren't hollow. They weren't blank. They watched him. "Anna," he whispered. She tilted her head, almost puzzled. Jude's heart hammered. She had been gone for weeks. His sister, the last of his blood. That he stepped closer, cautiously. She didn't move, didn't snarl, didn't growl. Instead, she said something, barely a whisper. But he heard it. "Don't forget me." He should have run, should have known better. But the words wrapped around him like chains. She was still in there, inside whatever the virus had turned her into. She remembered Anna, his little sister, a straight-A student, a sunflower-loving bookworm who cried at every movie and sang out loud when she thought no one was listening. And now she was standing barefoot beside a dead fountain, her skin pale, her voice barely human. That night, Jude didn't sleep. He sat in the radio room of the old fire station, the only place he felt safe. Surrounded by dusty walkie-talkies and maps marked with red ink, he turned the dial to static and whispered into the microphone. "Is anyone out there?" he asked. "Anyone who's seen one like her?" No answer. Only the wind. The next morning, he followed Anna. Not too close. Just enough to watch. She didn't act like the others. She didn't hunt. Didn't wander aimlessly. She sat, listened, stared at the sun. And sometimes, she wrote. With trembling fingers, she drew symbols on the pavement using charcoal from a burnt beam. Words. Names. Memories. Mom. Banana bread. August 17. The red sweater. Home. She was remembering. Not just fragments. Full thoughts. Jude wasn't the only one who noticed. They came that evening. The others who remembered 10 of them. Maybe more. Each one moved slowly, almost reverently, as if something deep within them still clung to a thread of life. One of them, an old man missing half his face, picked up a harmonica, blew a note. Wrong key. But he blew it again. Another note. A woman danced. And for a moment, the horror slipped away. Jude couldn't sleep for days. He documented everything. Drew pictures of their faces. Marked their behavior. Patterns. Times. The thinkers, as he began to call them, were different. They seemed drawn to memories. Places they once lived. Songs. Colors. Objects. But they were still dangerous. One night, one of them screamed. A terrible, guttural sound. And the others swarmed. A boy was torn apart. A boy who had been hiding, watching from the trees. Jude buried him. Name unknown. Another ghost for the list. The thinkers had limits. Something inside them remembered, but something else, darker, older, ruled them. And then came the collector. Jude first saw him near the water tower. Unlike the others, the collector wore a tattered suit and carried a bag full of trinkets. Wedding rings, baby shoes, eyeglasses, photographs. That he didn't shuffle like the rest. He walked, straight, deliberate, and when he looked at Jude, he spoke with perfect clarity. "You're not supposed to be here." Jude froze. What are you? He asked. The collector tilted his head. We are the memory. The ache. The part they tried to kill, but couldn't. The virus took the body, but memory doesn't rot. Jude's voice trembled. What do you want? To be remembered, said the collector. That's all we ever wanted. Jude began recording audio. Every night, he'd speak into the old cassette machine that he'd describe their behaviors, their movements, their thoughts. He'd talk about Anna, and slowly, other survivors began to respond. From miles away, voices came crackling through the static. You're not alone. We've seen them too. We call them the Rememberers. They dream. My brother, he dreams now. One voice, a woman from across the state line, said she had kept a thinker in her basement, that he played piano, that sometimes he cried. I think they know they're dead, she whispered, and I think it breaks them. Jude found Anna again 1 week later. She was writing in chalk on the wall of their old school. Jude, thank you. He wept, fell to his knees. She turned and walked away. That night, the moon was full. The streets were quiet, but in the heart of Low Hollow, something began to change. The Rememberers started gathering, dozens of them. Some carried instruments. Others held books. One brought a camera and placed it gently on a windowsill. They weren't attacking. They were performing a silent ritual of memory, a grieving symphony for a world long gone. Jude watched from the rooftop, heart thudding. And then, the collector spoke again. Tell our story. That winter was the coldest in decades. Jude's supplies ran low. His voice grew hoarse from reading every night into the microphone that he read poems, told old jokes, played cassette tapes of lullabies, anything that reminded the Rememberers of who they once were. They began leaving him gifts, old journals, drawings, locks of hair wrapped in string. Each one a memory, each one a plea. Remember me. Say my name. Don't let the silence win. Jude didn't live forever, and no one does. But his recordings survived, found years later in the ruins of Low Hollow by a girl with a scar over her eye and a heart full of questions. She listened to all of them, and when night fell, she spoke into the static for the first time. My name is Claire. I hear you. I remember. The zombies still walk. Most are hollow, but some, a few, still pause near playgrounds, still stare at paintings, still whisper names they can't quite recall. They are not living, not fully dead. They are memory. They are grief. They are the ones who remember. OUTRO, 2 minutes. Calm male voice. Thank you for joining us tonight. In a world where silence speaks louder than screams, where memory lingers even after the end. We hope this story gave you something to hold on to. If you enjoyed the ones who remember, please consider subscribing to our channel for more immersive, boring night stories. Let us know in the comments. Have you ever felt like a ghost of your past self? Like, subscribe, and most of all, sleep well tonight, that you're not alone.
The Ones Who Remember, Part 2. Claire's echo. I didn't come to Low Hollow looking for answers. That I came because I had nowhere else to go. The cities had all burned out months ago. The last time I saw another living person, he had offered me a canned peach and a loaded pistol, then disappeared into the mist without another word. I kept the peach, but not the pistol. That I don't carry weapons. Not anymore. That I came to Low Hollow because I heard something strange on a radio frequency buried beneath layers of static. A voice. Calm. Male. Tired. My name is Jude Mercer, it said. If you're listening, you're not alone. That was enough for me. The next morning, I packed up what little I had, a flashlight, a scarf, a cracked picture of my mother and me at the zoo, and walked until the road forgot how to be a road and became dust. Low Hollow wasn't marked on any signs. But it didn't need to be. When I stepped across the rotting town limits, the air changed. It wasn't just dead here. That IT was remembering. The first night I found the fire station. That IT looked like someone had tried to fortify it once. Wooden boards across the windows, sandbags half buried in moss, a rusted "Keep Out" sign swinging in the wind. But it wasn't locked. Inside, I found the tapes. They were in a red box under a radio desk, wrapped in plastic and labeled one by one with trembling hands. Tape 1, Observations. Tape 2, Anna. Tape 3, The Collector. Tape 4, Don't Forget. I played the first one. That his voice came through in waves, soft and frayed like a forgotten lullaby. That he spoke about the thinkers, the zombies who weren't quite gone. Who stared at things too long. Who wrote in chalk. who sang without knowing why that he called them rememberers, that he said they still held on to echoes of their lives. Fragments. Feelings. Names, and he spoke about one, a girl named Anna, who had been his sister, who had looked him in the eyes and whispered, "Don't forget me." I listened to all of them that night that I sat cross-legged on the cold floor, wrapped in my scarf, staring at the blinking red light of the tape recorder like it was the last candle in the world. His voice carried me somewhere else, somewhere between the dead and the dreaming, that he spoke about ritual. About how the rememberers would gather, not to feed, not to hunt, but to remember. To act out memories like a theater of ghosts. One man played a harmonica. Another wept at a burnt mailbox. One woman danced in a circle of broken mirrors, that he called them dangerous, but he also called them beautiful. On the last tape, Jude said something that stayed with me: "I won't live forever. But memory doesn't rot." And then, if you find this, please tell our story. I didn't sleep that night. The wind outside howled like it was reading the names of the dead aloud to the trees. And inside me, something stirred, something I hadn't felt in years: purpose. The next morning, I found her. She was standing in front of the school, barefoot, wild-haired, staring at the chalkboard through a shattered window. She didn't move like the others. Not slow and mindless. Not like a corpse pulled on puppet strings. No. She moved like she was remembering how to be human. She wrote on the wall in broken chalk, "It was Tuesday. We had orange slices." I froze. She turned and looked at me, not past me. At me. Her eyes weren't fully gone, they were cloudy, yes. Glassy. But not dead. Something behind them flickered like a flame refusing to go out. That I whispered, "Anna?" She didn't answer, but she didn't attack either. Instead, she Saturday and she cried. That evening, I returned to the fire station and found a second red box. That it hadn't been there before. Inside was a tape labeled, "For Claire." My hands trembled as I pressed play. Jude's voice again. But weaker: "Claire. If you're hearing this, you made it. Somehow. And I'm so glad you did." He paused. "There's something I didn't tell anyone. Not on the radio. Not on the other tapes." Static crackled. "The rememberers, they're evolving. Slowly. Like frost thawing. I think they're becoming something new." He took a shaky breath. "I've seen one speak full sentences. I've seen them hold hands. I saw Anna draw a perfect map of this town, from memory." Silence, please. Stay with them. Watch. Learn. But most of all, remember us. The tape ended, and I cried. Over the next few weeks, I watched them. I stayed quiet. Kept to the shadows. They didn't seem to mind me. Some even seemed aware of me. They'd leave small objects near the fire station each morning. A worn teddy bear. A necklace. A crayon drawing of a house. It felt like they were offering pieces of their past. Begging me to understand. I kept a journal. Drew their faces. Named them. The dancer, she moved only under moonlight, always in circles, arms stretched wide like she was chasing a memory. The quiet boy, maybe 12 when he turned, sat every day near the same tree, building little towers of sticks and stones. The singer, mouth stitched shut by age or injury, but still humming, always humming. And then there was the collector. He scared me, not because he was violent. I never saw him attack. But because he looked awake. He wore a tattered suit. Carried a brown leather bag. Collected objects, hair ribbons, Polaroids, music boxes. Labeled each with a black marker. He saw me one day and said, in a low voice, "You're her echo." I didn't answer. He placed a photograph at my feet, a girl standing beside Jude in front of the fountain. "Anna, you carry his voice now," he said. "Don't waste it." Then he vanished. I don't know how long I stayed in Low Hollow. Time folds in on itself here. There are days where the sun forgets to rise. Nights where the rememberers gather in silence and just stand together. Facing the stars. Holding hands. Sometimes they hum in unison, other times they look at me like I'm a dream they half remembered. I speak to them softly. Tell them stories from books I've read. Songs I barely remember the lyrics to. One night, the dancer placed a mirror in front of me. When I looked into it, my reflection was gone, but behind me, dozens of faces stared back, and one of them smiled. Eventually, I began broadcasting. The old radio still worked. I found a microphone and connected it to the tower Jude had repaired. That I didn't say much. Just short messages. Gentle, careful words. This is Claire. If you can hear me, you're not alone. And over time, the voices came back, weak at first. Crumbling, but then clearer. I hear you. I saw one hum a lullaby today. My daughter draws now. With chalk. I think she remembers me. There's something else that I haven't told anyone, but I need to say it. Last week, Anna came to me. She didn't speak. She just reached out and touched my hand, and I felt it. A memory, not mine, hers, the warmth of a birthday candle. The smell of Jude's old coat. The sound of rain on a tin roof while reading by flashlight. That I think she gave it to me, and now I carry it inside me. A gift, a piece of who she was. I don't know where this is going. Maybe they're evolving, maybe they're becoming something new, maybe we all are. But I know one thing, that as long as I'm here, I'll keep speaking. That I'll remember for them. That I'll tell their stories. That I'll whisper their names into the silence, because they are not gone, not really. They are echoes, and echoes never truly die.
The Ones Who Remember, Part 3. The listener. The first time I heard her voice, I thought it was a dream. The static of the old radio had been my only companion for nearly 3 years. Static and wind, static and fire, static and silence. But that night, just after midnight, buried beneath the white noise like a secret waiting to be found, I heard her. This is Claire. If you can hear me, you're not alone. It took me a moment to believe it. Then I leaned forward, pressed my ear against the rusted speaker, and waited. Nothing, just silence. But silence that was different now. Silence that had been touched by a voice. That I waited 3 more nights before she spoke again. Her message was the same. Gentle, calm, almost like she was singing a lullaby to the dead. That I didn't know who Claire was. I didn't know where she was. But something inside me, something I thought had died long ago, told me I had to find her. I left. I packed my bag with everything I had left. 2 cans of peaches, 1 cracked flashlight, a knife I hadn't used in 6 months, and a worn journal filled with names I couldn't bring myself to forget. Then I walked east, toward Low Hollow, toward the voice, toward memory. The road had stopped pretending to be a road after the first 2 days. Pavement crumbled. Grass grew through every crack. I passed husks of cars, their doors hanging open like broken jaws. I passed a swing set tangled with ivy. I passed signs that once said, "Welcome," but now just groaned in the wind. That I didn't see any of them for days. Not the shamblers, not the rememberers, not even birds. Just the world, sighing. I spoke out loud sometimes, not because I expected an answer, but because I needed to hear something besides my own footsteps. I told stories from before, about my brother, who used to build model ships, about my mother's laugh, about the time I got lost in a mall and cried until a stranger gave me a lollipop. Memories don't rot. That's what Jude said. Claire repeated it on one of her broadcasts. It became my mantra, my spell against the forgetting. By the time I reached the edge of Low Hollow, my legs were shaking and my throat was raw. But I had made it, and the town welcomed me with the kind of silence that felt sacred. The first thing I noticed was the fountain dry, cracked, but filled with small tokens, buttons, feathers, bits of yarn. And in the center, scratched into the stone, "Remember us." I walked through the streets like I was stepping into someone's dream, or someone's grave. Every building told a story in the way it leaned. Every window watched me, and then I saw them. A line of them, standing shoulder to shoulder beside the old school building. Not moving, not hunting, just standing, their heads turned toward the wind, their eyes cloudy but not empty, and they hummed, low, dissonant, a sound that crawled into your spine and settled there like dust. I froze. They didn't come toward me. They didn't seem to care I was there at all, until one of them stepped forward. A man in a suit, leather bag slung across his shoulder. The collector. I recognized him from Claire's words. That he looked at me for a long time, and then said something I didn't expect. "You're late." I didn't respond. My mouth was too dry, and I didn't trust my legs to hold me if I tried to move. The collector stepped closer. "We've been waiting." I swallowed. "You know me?" "No, but we know what you carry." He reached into his bag and pulled out a photograph. Held it out. I didn't take it. He dropped it at my feet. A picture of me, taken before the fall. Me and my brother, smiling. Ice cream smeared across our faces that I dropped to my knees. How? But the collector was already turning away, and the others followed him, one by one, disappearing into the fog. That night, I stayed in the fire station that IT smelled like dust and memory on the desk. The radio still blinked, and taped to the wall, beneath a cracked map, were words scrawled in black ink. Speak, even if it's only to the dark. So I did. This is Micah. I made it to Low Hollow. Claire, if you can hear me, I think I saw them. The Rememberers. I think they know me. I don't know why. The radio stayed silent, but I kept talking anyway. I told her about the picture, about the collector, about the way the others hummed, like they were tuning some invisible instrument. And when I woke the next morning, someone had left a cassette tape on the windowsill, labeled, Claire, for Micah. Her voice filled the room like morning light. Micah, I heard you. You're not imagining this. I think they're starting to choose. She paused. They remember you because you remember them. I closed my eyes and let her voice carry me. She spoke of the dancer, of the boy with the stick towers, of Anna, and she spoke of Jude, softly, with reverence, like remembering a dream that still hurts. He believed they could be more. I think he was right. I listened to that tape 5 times before I could sleep again, and when I finally closed my eyes, I dreamed for the first time in months, not of death, but of music. Over the next few weeks, I stayed, walked the streets, learned their rhythms. They came at night mostly. The Rememberers. They moved like ghosts who hadn't quite accepted the rules of haunting. Some wrote on walls. Others traced circles in the dirt. One sat beside me on a bench and handed me a paper crane made of old receipts. They didn't speak, but they remembered, and I started to feel something. Not safe. That word doesn't belong to this world anymore, but seen, recognized. Each night, I broadcast. Micah here. I watched the dancer tonight. Her movements are changing. Less erratic. More deliberate. Like she's trying to tell a story with her body. Or, tonight, one of them sat beside me and hummed my mother's lullaby. Or, I think I'm starting to dream their memories. I know how that sounds. But one night, I dreamed I was a girl standing in the school hallway, holding a book about birds, waiting for the bell to ring. That I felt her heartbeat. Her worry. Her crush on a boy named Elijah. When I woke up, that girl was standing across the street from the fire station, and she looked at me with something between fear and hope that we didn't speak. But we didn't need to. I whispered. I remember. She nodded, then walked away. I think that's what they want. Not food, not violence. Just to be remembered, to be felt, to be heard. That I don't know what's happening to them. That I don't know what's happening to us. Maybe we're all becoming something else, something in between. Memory doesn't rot. That's what Jude said. And I believe him. So I keep speaking. I speak into the dark, into the fog, into the silence. Because somewhere out there, someone is listening. Maybe you are. And if you are, just know this. You're not alone. We remember you. Even now. Especially now. The ones who remember. Part 4. The quiet between. I knew he was coming before I saw him. The air changed first. Low Hollow has a strange way of welcoming strangers. Not with fanfare or warnings, but with quiet. As if the town itself holds its breath. When Micah entered, that quiet deepened, thickened, settled into the cracks of the buildings like fog. And then, one night, I heard him. This is Micah. I made it to Low Hollow. Claire, if you can hear me, I think I saw them. The Rememberers. I think they know me. I don't know why. He sounded tired. Not the kind of tired that sleep can cure. The other kind. The kind that settles into your bones after too many losses. I knew that voice. I carried it once. That I left a tape for him the next morning. And when I returned to the fire station hours later, it was gone. He was real. Micah stayed quiet for the first few days. He watched more than he spoke. That was good. This place teaches you to listen first. That we didn't meet properly until day 6. That I found him sitting beside the dancer in the overgrown garden behind the school. She was moving slowly, arms like drifting silk, her feet silent in the grass. Micah sat with his knees pulled to his chest, watching her like she was the only beautiful thing left in the world. He didn't turn when I approached. He just said, I used to watch my mother dance. In the living room. Sunday mornings. Barefoot. With her eyes closed. I sat beside him. She remembered that. I said, I didn't tell her. You didn't have to. That night, we stayed up talking. We sat in the fire station. sharing the last of his canned peaches, trading fragments of who we used to be. He told me about his brother's ships, his mother's laugh, his fear of silence that I told him about Jude. About the tapes. About Anna. About the time I first realized the rememberers weren't just echoes, they were bridges. They're not coming back, I said. Not really. But something in them still reaches. Reaches for what? He asked. For what it felt like. To be loved. To be known. To be alive. He didn't answer. But he didn't have to. The next morning, we found the collector. He was standing on the roof of the old courthouse, his coat whipping in the wind, his face turned to the horizon. Micah called out to him. Why do you keep collecting? The collector didn't move. Then, in a voice that was more wind than words, because someone must remember the names. That night, we wrote down every name we could think of. People we loved, people we lost, even those we barely knew. We wrote them on old receipts, napkins, scraps of notebook paper. Then we placed them at the fountain in the center of town. When we came back the next day, every slip of paper was gone. I in their place, feathers. The rememberers began changing. Subtly at first, point one carved a circle into a tree and placed a flower inside it. Another sat beside a broken bicycle and reached out to spin its wheel. They were repeating moments. Practicing. Micah said it was like they were relearning the shape of memory. I said maybe they were becoming something else, something new. And that's when the dreams began. They started small. A sound. A smell. A face that wasn't mine, staring back in a mirror that wasn't real. But then they deepened. Point one night, I dreamed I was a man named Elijah, in love with a girl who danced in the rain. I remembered the weight of her hand, the way her laugh spilled across puddles. When I woke, I could still feel her fingertips on my palm. Micah dreamed too. He said he was standing in a library, surrounded by people with blank faces. They handed him books that melted in his hands. But one remained whole, titled The One Who Stayed. Inside, his own handwriting. I think they're using us, he whispered. Not using, I said. Trusting. We decided to leave town for one day, just to test something. We walked to the ridge that overlooked Low Hollow, a place Jude once mentioned on one of his early tapes. The wind was stronger there. Colder. We sat in silence, watching the fog settle across rooftops like a shroud. I'm afraid, Micah said. Of what? That we're forgetting who we were. That we're becoming them. I reached out and took his hand. If we are, I said, then we're teaching them how to remember. And in that moment, I realized something. It wasn't just about memory. It was about legacy, about passing something forward, even if we never understood it ourselves. When we returned to the fire station, we found something waiting. A small book, handmade, bound in twine. On the cover, one word burned into the leather: us. Inside were pages of sketches, faces, hands, eyes, some human, some not quite. On the final page, two figures sitting side by side beneath the stars, Micah and me, drawn in charcoal with surprising tenderness. They were watching us, learning us, becoming us. That night, Micah read into the radio. Not just a broadcast. A story. A love story. A tragedy. A memory. About his brother's last words. About a girl he almost married. About the ocean. I watched the rememberers gather outside as he spoke. They didn't move. They just listened. When he finished, he turned to me. They need more stories. I nodded. We all do. I don't know what's happening here anymore. Not really. I don't know if this is healing or surrender. But I only know that when the rememberers gather now, they sit in circles, hold hands. Some of them hum songs I don't recognize. Some of them cry. And sometimes, when I speak to them, I think they understand. I think they remember me. Not just because I'm here, but because I saw them, because I spoke their names, and because I listened. One day, Micah asked me if I ever thought about leaving. I said yes. But I never meant it. He said he didn't. Either. That we had become part of something now. A quiet between. A place where memory lingers and becomes something new. So here we are, still. Here, still speaking, still remembering. For those who came before, for those who remain, for those who will come after. We are the bridge, and the quiet between the echoes. We are the ones who remember. The ones who remember. Part 5. The rain that fell backward. They say the rain doesn't fall the same way anymore. That when it lands, it doesn't soak the earth. It just lingers midair for a heartbeat longer than it should, like it's remembering what gravity used to feel like. Maybe that's just poetry, But when you've lived this long in a world swallowed by rot and ruin, you start looking for signs. Messages. Echoes of what we once were. Of what we might still become. My name's Jude. If you've listened to the tapes, then you already know parts of me. You've walked my streets, heard the hiss of the cassette winding back like breath returning to a still chest. But I'm not dead. Not yet, and now. I know Claire's not, either. The last message I left wasn't meant to be a goodbye. I didn't plan for her to find the fire station, didn't plan for her voice. Low, careful, and full of the kind of grief that's quiet, not loud. To filter through my old transmitter. It happened at night, of course. Everything real does. The shadows aren't always kind, but they're honest. Her voice came through static. Jude, if you're still out there, I heard you. It was the first time in years I felt my ribs expand too far, like my lungs had remembered something bigger than breath. I've been moving toward her, not fast, not desperate. I'm no hero. I'm a man whose knees crack too loud and whose heart forgets to beat steady when I pass graveyards where the dead don't stay buried. But I've been walking through forests that whisper names I don't recall, across towns swallowed by vines and guilt. The world is quiet, but it isn't dead. I passed through a town yesterday where the crows followed me. Not overhead. No, that would have been normal. These ones perched on rooftops. In windows. Silent. Watching. That's how I knew. The rememberers were close. I don't know if you've seen one, but they're not the same. Not like the old ones. The mindless. The rememberers don't run. They walk. Slowly. They wait. They tilt their heads when you speak, as if your words stir something they can't quite reach. Some of them hum. God help me. I heard one humming the other day. A lullaby. My mother used to. Never mind. Point is, they're not just walking corpses. Something's alive in there. Memories, maybe. Ghosts trapped inside rotting skin. When I finally reached the edge of Low Hollow again, I could feel her. Not literally. But you know when someone's presence bends the air? She'd been here. Claired up she'd heard me. And then she spoke back. And I knew we were writing the same story from opposite ends. I stayed in a half-standing diner last night. The sign outside said Marines, but someone had spray-painted "Stay Quiet" across the glass. Inside, a jukebox still stood in the corner. Unplugged. Dust-covered. I almost wanted to plug it in, but the silence felt sacred. So I sat in a booth, unrolled my old sleeping mat, and pressed the record button. Claire, I said softly into the mic. If you're still listening, I've come back. I'm not far from the Eastern Rail Yard. That's where I'll wait. There's still something here. Something watching. But I don't think it wants to hurt us. I think it wants to remember, too. I don't know if she'll hear that, but I had to speak it. Words are fragile. They break easy. But sometimes they bind, too. Sometimes they're all we have. I'm watching the rain now. The way it hangs a second too long before falling. Maybe the sky forgets how to let go. Maybe we all do. But I'm still here. I'm still remembering. And if Claire comes, maybe together, we'll teach the rain how to fall again. The Ones Who Remember. Part 6. The Fever Nest. I should have never left the southern ridge. I knew better. I knew better. But the mind. The mind plays cruel tricks on you when you're alone too long. You start chasing echoes, following shadows like they're promises. You forget the weight of your own footfalls, and how even a breath too loud can bring the swarm. It was Claire's voice that brought me back from the edge. Her last recording, the one I found tangled in ivy at the base of an old cemetery gate, broken and bleeding with static. If you're still out there, I need you to know. They remember more than pain now. They're starting to nest. And it's not just instinct. It's something else. Nest. That word should have meant something softer. Like warmth. Like birdsong. But the way she said it, I kept walking north after that. Straight into the storm. I found the fever nest 3 days later. It was hidden beneath the shell of a burned-out hospital. The kind where the wind still drags old wheelchairs down cracked hallways and four poles clatter like bones in the night. The ground floor was empty. Too emptied, and no bones. No blood. Just rows and rows of patient files, fluttering like dead leaves. And that smell, sweet rot, mixed with burnt antiseptic. It was the kind of silence that screams trap. That I should have turned back. But I didn't, because I heard them again. Whispers, not the kind the wind makes. No, these were threaded, soft, deliberate, almost rehearsed. A hum of half-memories stitched with names, and then I saw them. The rememberers. But these weren't like the ones before. These were building something that at first, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. One of them, an old woman in a tattered nurse's uniform, was arranging chairs in a circle. Another was dragging a broken vending machine into place like it still mattered. They moved with intention, purpose, and then, all at once, they stopped. Every single head turned toward me. Their eyes, not hungry, not wild, just watching, and then, in unison, they sat down. Saturday. In the circle I could hear my heart pounding in my ears. And then the nurse opened her mouth. She didn't moan. She didn't growl. She spoke. You're late for group. I didn't sit. I couldn't. Not yet. Instead, I took a step back, boots crunching broken tile beneath me. The circle didn't move. They just watched. And the nurse repeated, slower this time. You're late for group. Her jaw clicked with the effort, muscles slack and twitching. Another one, a man with a prison number tattooed across his neck, turned to her and whispered, new one. He's not ready. They all nodded, as if understanding. Understanding me. I backed away down the hallway, past rusted gurneys and shattered glass. But even from 30 paces, I could hear her call out, when you are, we'll be here. Then the whispers resumed, threading together like broken prayer. That night, I didn't sleep. Not because of fear, because of questions. What were they doing? How were they organizing? And most of all, was Claire here? Because her name was still burned into the back of that empty chair. Claire. She was the first one who understood the virus wasn't just killing people, the IT was rewriting them. She'd whisper it into her recorder at night while she cataloged mutations. The ones who change slow, they don't lose everything. They remember the rules. They remember routine. And some remember love. I went back. Of course I did. This time, I left my weapons at the door. I stepped into the circle, and SAT.IT took them a full minute to acknowledge me. Then, slowly, one by one, they turned their heads. The nurse spoke again. Name. I hesitated. Caleb. She blinked. Welcome, Caleb. We share here. We don't bite. A few chuckled. Dry, breathy laughter, like leaves rustling in a crypt. Today's theme, she continued, is regret. And one by one, they spoke. The prisoner with the neck tattoo. I let my sister die for food. And then I ate the food and never felt full again. A girl with one eye missing. I ran from my father when he turned. But he followed me for days. Every time I slept, he stood watch. Until the fever took me too. And the nurse. I gave morphine to those who weren't ready. Just to make the screams stop. They spoke like people who remembered being human. Who were trapped between memory and instinct. And then they turned to me. Your turn. I almost couldn't speak. But the words came anyway. I left her. The day she started coughing. I promised I'd come back with help. But I never did. I stared at the chair marked Claire. She waited for me. But I never came. And then, something happened. The air changed. The circle stood as one dot, and the nurse said, then it is time to find her. The rememberers led me deeper into the hospital. Past signs marked quarantine, through doors sealed with dried blood and broken boards, down a staircase that groaned with every step, that we reached a ward where vines had burst through the walls. The fever nest, they were building it, dozens of them, stacking old mattresses, blankets, pillows, children's toys, not for shelter, but for memory. A room that looked like home. They parted for me. At the far end, propped up in a rocking chair, was a woman with silver hair and glassy blue eyes. Claire. She wasn't fully gone. Not yet. She looked at me and smiled. Took you long enough. We stayed like that for hours. No words. Just being. Sometimes that's all that's left, and sometimes it's enough. The rememberers circled around us. Not to attack, but to protect from the wild ones. From the ones too far gone. They kept watch as the storm rolled in, and when Claire's breath grew shallow, the nurse knelt beside her. No more fever. No more forgetting. And Claire was gone, but not lost, because they remembered her, and now, so do I. I left the next morning. The rememberers didn't follow, but as I crossed the ridge, I looked back and saw them waving point one last time, still circling, still healing, still remembering. And I realized the virus didn't win. Not completely, because so long as memory remains, we are not truly gone. We are just waiting to be found.
If you're still with me, safe and resting, thank you for staying. The world we walk through in this story is dark, but within that darkness, a little warmth lingers. In memories, in hope, in voices that refuse to be forgotten. If this story kept you company tonight, if it helped you drift, or just made the night feel a little less lonely, I'd be honored if you'd consider subscribing to this channel. Your support keeps these quiet stories alive, one heartbeat at a time. There's more to come. More voices, more echoes, more truth still buried in the dust of low hollow.so. Until the next chapter finds you, take care of your heart, sleep deep, and remember, some of them still feel. Good night.